The report card on Malcolm Turnbull as Prime Minister does, of course, have some positives. There were tax cuts for individuals and for businesses. Same-sex marriage finally got the go-ahead. And, of course, there was China. In many respects, Malcolm Turnbull led the Western world in standing up to China, don't you think?
Yes, I agree with that. You know, Malcolm certainly laid down the early tracks on that. There's no doubt about that.
Madam Speaker, the President of the People's Republic of China.
In 2014, it was a coup for Prime Minister Abbott to welcome President Xi Jinping to Australia.
It is said that when friends meet, 1,000 cups of wine cannot contain their happiness.
3 years later, China's strategic posture had changed.
The Prime Minister.
And Prime Minister Turnbull was pushing back.
Today I'm introducing legislation to counter the threat of foreign states exerting improper influence over our system of government and our political landscape.
Foreign interference laws were world-leading.
Turnbull also banned Chinese-owned telco giant Huawei from building Australia's 5G network.
I can tell you, we didn't labour over it. We ended up going, hand-wringing over it.
You had good intel.
No, we had good instincts. It was backed up by the intel, totally.
You knew there'd be blowback.
Of course there was going to be blowback. I mean, but this was the whole thing about standing up to China. People weren't doing it. No one said no. Australia said no. And we stood up to China and we followed through. Again, sovereignty, Chris. It's the theme of our government.
It might be the strongest theme through Abbott, Turnbull, Morrison.
I agree.
That is this muscularity in foreign policy.
Well, muscularity, assertiveness definitely, but just an instinctive and passionate belief in Australia's sovereignty and Australia's national interests, and that comes first. And another thing the three Prime Ministers had in common, they all made captain's calls. In Malcolm Turnbull's case, it was his so-called infamous bonk ban. You never get along with Turnbull.
Oh, I did at the start. That's the weirdest thing, you know. This is the craziest thing. At the start, I got along very well with him. And in fact, people used to say we would almost finish each other's sentences.
Barnaby and I and our colleagues have to work harder.
Early in 2018, the relationship between the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister developed irreconcilable differences.
Barnaby made a shocking error of judgment.
I remember watching it on television.
In having an affair with a young woman working in his office.
And then going to the louvers, opening, I went, what's this dipstick up to?
The Prime Minister was reacting to revelations the married, socially conservative Barnaby Joyce was in a relationship with his former media advisor, Vikki Campion, and she was pregnant. Turnbull was having none of it.
Ministers, regardless of whether they are married or single, must not engage in sexual relations with their staff.
I went straight round to confront him about it into his room, and Scott Morrison walked out of the door.
And he took a principled stand on this, and it was the right stand. I mean, ministers shouldn't have sex with their staff. They shouldn't.
But in announcing that policy, wasn't he sealing the fate of Barnaby Joyce?
No, he was doing the right thing.
Mr Speaker, the Deputy Prime Minister will be taking leave from Monday, the 19th of February.
For Labor, this was manna from heaven.
Shocking error of judgment, truly deficient.
Inept,
Humiliation.
pull the scab off for everybody to have a look at.
He has to consider his own position.
Was the bonk ban an effort to force you out?
Yes, of course. And I remember saying to Peter Dutton, look, at the moment I'm gone as Deputy Prime Minister, Turnbull will be gone within 3 months. And this is an incredibly bombastic, egotistical statement, but it's the truth. When he lost me, he lost.